I've got, needless to say, a couple things to say. Steve, you want to start? You had an epic tweet. The second I heard the news, I went right to Instapunt it. I thought it was absolutely great.
Breaking. FBI finds John Wilkes Booth extremely careless in discharge of firearm.
Yeah. Extremely careless.
Yeah, that's
the verdict.
weasel phrase that Comey used today.
That's the verdict. Extremely careless. Scotty, you want to make an opening statement before the sky starts raining frogs and blood? Blood runs down the river.
It's a long time ago when we first started talking about this, and you guys can hear me clearly too, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. A long time ago when we first started talking about this, I was very, very skeptical that the FBI was going to come out with anything that would make us feel good. And so I'm not in a position to say I told you so, because I was hoping beyond hope that they'd actually do their job. But this is not an altogether surprising thing for me. That doesn't make it any less tragic, but it is not altogether surprising.
Well, I was gobsmacked by it. I absolutely was. I thought that Comey was going to put it at the desk of Loretta Lynch, and then Lynch would basically make the decision. I was relatively sure the decision would be not to prosecute. I never for a second thought that after all of this work and all of this time, with these number of agents doing, what was it, been a year and a half now?
Yeah.
That he would come up this shorthanded. I think it's treason. I'm just uncorking today because I don't know what else to call it. There is no question that she's guilty of multiple felonies. There's no question whatsoever. And the point I keep trying to make here is, if you look at the two statutes, one of them says if you do not turn in all of your records, that is a felony. Is there anybody who's going to make the case now that she didn't turn in all of her records? Is there anybody who says that she didn't turn in all of her records? Of course not. The whole thing has been about whether or not it's secret. That doesn't matter. The second felony is if you did anything to obstruct or to destroy any messages. That's a second different felony, which also carries a penalty of forfeiture of any job in the United States government. It's got nothing to do with the secret classifications. It's got nothing to do with anything. The second that the FBI found an official email on Hillary Clinton's private server that was not turned in when she turned in her stuff, she's guilty of that felony. There's no question about it. And for Comey to back down like this, at the last minute after this on the tarmac, see, somebody said to me when I came into work today, Carlos said to me, people think this is an insult to the American people's intelligence. It's not insulting their intelligence. Everybody knows what's going on. It's an insult to our willpower. That's what it is.
Yeah. Bill, remember, it was supposed to be the bad old days. It was the dirty days of the FBI when J. Edgar Hoover kept tabs and blackmail lists on all the politicians. But you know what? As bad as that was, at least it kept them in line. Now the FBI is officially a Clinton lapdog.
Well, yeah, Bill, can I throw in something here? Because it occurred to me
it's wide open, Scotty.
Literally just this morning. I don't know why this didn't occur to me before. That Hillary Clinton's defense about the classified emails, of which they found more than 100, I mean, the FBI said that she handled more than 100 classified emails. Some of them were top secret. And
some of them were SAP, above top secret.
Yes. And her defense has been, well, they classified them after the fact. And all the time, I just kind of didn't really know what to make of that. But this morning I began to think, I thought, wait a minute. The reason why the federal government, and specifically the State Department or the Defense Department, has a secure email system within which you must operate is because there is so much communication that we don't always know in the moment whether something is going to be considered classified or not. So we want to create this little playground for you where you can run and play and jump and swing on the monkey bars without anybody getting hurt.
If you happen to say something in real time that you shouldn't have said, it just stays in house.
That's right.
Yeah, and what happened to the air gap? That top secret information, the stuff that wasn't post-dated top secret, some of that information is created top secret. The nature of the information itself means that it's called classified at birth, I believe is the official phrase. She had some of that material on her server, which means that somebody on her staff broke the air gap between the State Department server, which has no connection to the outside world, and Hillary Clinton's server, which was open to anybody who knows to put admin in as a password.
I think it's a mistake to talk about the classified stuff. The second that they found that they recovered one email from her hard drive, which had been wiped clean with a cloth, that is a violation of two federal statutes. They're both felonies. And once again, this Republican so-called, I can't even call it leadership, I don't know what to call it. Once again, we have allowed these people, these lawless communists, I don't know whether this is a slow motion coup or whether it's more of a mafia shakedown takeover, but it's one of these things, probably both. Once again, the Republican leadership has allowed them to frame this debate about whether or not these emails were secret, when in point of fact it has nothing to do with them being secret. The second they got an email off of that server after she had wiped it clean, it is a violation of two federal statutes, and the idiots will never ever stop playing by the Democrats' rules. Will never stop.
Can I just sort of inject a little practical politics into this? Because I think in a normal situation, there are many crimes committed across this country where charges are never filed because essentially the prosecutor decides, I don't have enough, I can't win this court case. And prosecutors don't like taking something to trial that they can't win or that they think they might not win. And so they withhold that. However, if the average individual, you and I, the person watching here right now, were in a similar situation, there would only be an analysis of the evidence, and they'd say, okay, can we win based on the evidence or can we not win based on the evidence? But here, because of who Hillary Clinton is, and this these words catch in my throat, but because of who Hillary Clinton is, there's an additional factor that says, do we have enough evidence to get the woman who was Secretary of State, who was First Lady, and who may be the next President of the United States? They can't not think of that.
Yes.
And yet it's an abortion of justice to think of it.
Of course they have the evidence, Scott. Of course they do. And that's
there.
why the most interesting thing in Comey's speech, in his statement, was he didn't say that she was not guilty of these violations. He said we could not find a reasonable prosecutor would not take the case, right?
Yeah.
That's a backhanded way. That's a backhanded way of saying, look, we've got the evidence. Who's going to prosecute this case with the Democratic frontrunner, with the conventions a month away?
Yeah, Comey's excuse came down to prosecuting a Clinton is hard. I'm not going to do it. It's too much.
I want to know. Here's what I want to know.
Never seen that before.
James Comey was, up until today, rumored to be an independent guy with a backbone. The fact that he went after this investigation at all in the first place is an indication.
Rudy Giuliani said he was.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so he at the last second is got this meeting on this airplane, and then he basically calls off the dogs. John Roberts apparently had a vote against Obamacare in the first round, and then at the last minute he changes his vote and he votes in favor of it. And we see all of this stuff going on from people like Boehner and people like McConnell, and they keep backing off. And I'm wondering what is being said to them. What could be said? Just assume the principle for a second, okay? Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that John Roberts and Comey were both honest people who were determined to do their job and to deliver a just decision. I'm not saying they have something on them, although they might. What do you say to the director of the FBI to make him overlook this kind of thing? And it's not just overlook it, guys. It's overlook it after he's spent almost 2 years, put 50, 60, 100 agents on the case, makes him look like an idiot. The optics with the meeting on the airplane are appalling. So what is the leverage?
Maybe I'm more cynical than you are, Bill, but I'm looking at it this way. The nature of government is such now, of our government is such now, that it attracts bad people. It attracts the wrong kind of people. It attracts corruptible people if they aren't corrupt before they enter the system. And so when I look at a John Roberts or a Comey backing down like this, I don't think, gosh, they seem so upright. What could they possibly have in their closet? I have gotten to the point, I never thought I was this cynical, but I have now gotten to the point where I just assume Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever, that they're all guilty as all hell right from the get-go. Before they even dream of getting into American politics, you've got to have something dirty and rotten in your soul, at least if you're going to get anywhere.
Can I take this completely in the other direction? Because
Go.
before we go,
We don't need any more
conspiracy
permission,
theory,
but we're
because
just pitch it in.
before we go full conspiracy theory, let's just, what is that theory? What is it, Occam's razor that
Yes.
says
Yes.
you go for the simplest possible
All other
solutions?
things being equal, the simplest
Yes.
answer is probably
so let's
true.
let's go for this. Let's pretend we didn't have our own political viewpoints that we've had and cultivated for many years. And if we just looked at this as an outsider looking in, we say we have the guy who's the head of the FBI, who is supposed to be a decent, honest individual. He spent a couple of years, his department, his organization spent a couple of years looking into the evidence, and they have come to the conclusion that, like any other prosecutor, they've got to make a decision. Can we go to the mat with this or not? And he has made the decision that a decent human being would make, in that it's not saying whether Hillary Clinton has integrity. It's not saying whether Hillary Clinton is unethical. It's not saying whether or not Hillary Clinton has even committed a crime. But can we take this? Can we indict and convict?
Well,
And that's the simplest explanation.
Before we say another word, we're getting a bunch of comments here. I'm checking the comment
Sure.
stream, and a lot of people are saying your volume is low, Scotty.
Okay, I may have the wrong microphone in front of me here. How
Well,
about this? Does
turn
that
it
sound
up.
better?
Hey,
I'm
Bill,
hearing
let
you
me-
fine in the
Oh, I'm sorry,
headsets,
go
but
ahead.
we'll find out pretty quickly here from the comment section. It's great to have the
Okay.
live feedback. Got something in my eye.
Let
It's
me
just the
throw
one
something
eye.
in while you look for
Otherwise,
that. The nature of these charges and the position of the person, excuse me, there aren't charges. The nature of the evidence and the nature of the person seeking office and the nature of the office that they're seeking demands that there be an indictment to restore trust in the system. It demands, even if you
Correct.
can't win it in
Correct.
court.
Correct.
To restore faith, you have to do it. And Comey chickened out. God
He
knows
did.
why.
Comey knows that she's guilty. I know that she's guilty because I can read an English sentence. So, so she's guilty. So yes, Scott and Steve, it's not like, gee, we don't have enough to prosecute. His position should have been, whether or not we win this case, it doesn't matter. We have to bring these charges because she's guilty.
But see, now, Bill, I think that is cognitive dissonance there, because I don't really think that an FBI director says, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's guilty, but I'm not going to bring the case.
Scotty.
If you're a decent person as an FBI director, you say, hey, if she's guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's not one of those things where,
No, it's a
yeah, I know
reasonable
she's
doubt.
guilty, but
No,
I
not
don't
a
have
shadow.
the stuff to bring to
Scotty.
court. He either has the goods or he doesn't.
Did they or did they not recover top secret documents? Again, I'm falling into the same trap. Did they or did they not
Yeah.
recover emails from Hillary Clinton's private server that were not turned in when she left office, yes or no? If the answer is no, then we would have found this out a year and a half ago. We wouldn't have had to put 60 agents on it. The fact that we had to get agents clearance means that not only was there more than one, but there were some of them were top secret. The top secret doesn't matter, but it obviously doesn't help. So he knows that she's guilty. The second they get an email off of that server that was not turned in, that has to do with the official business, she's guilty. And this business about, maybe he didn't. Of course she knew. Of course she knew. I mean, he knew. And you know what it is? Here's what it is. This is the thing I was saying earlier. This is not insulting the American people's intelligence, because everybody knows what's going on. Having the Attorney General meet with the husband of the person who's under investigation out on a tarmac in an airplane for half an hour, and then for them to say, "Oh, we just talked about our grandchildren. It was just happened to be a coincidence that we were both in the same place at the same time." They are not insulting the American people's intelligence. Okay, everybody knows what's going on. They are insulting the American people's will to do something about it. They're insulting our willpower, and they're insulting our essence. They know that the press, there's only one thing that could prevent this kind of thing, and that's the press. If the press had stayed with it, then she never would have been the nominee. But they know, yes, the optics are bad. Yes, they know that everything's bad, but what matters is she's off the hook, and people will forget about the optics, and people will forget about how criminal it looks, we'll just take it. And why wouldn't they think that? We've taken everything else.
Well, here's what hasn't happened yet. They were talking, a year ago or maybe 6 months ago that when Comey was still thought to be honest, that if DOJ didn't agree to address this properly, that there would be a revolt within the FBI. It's only been a few hours. Let's see what happens tomorrow and in the coming weeks at the FBI.
Well, not that I don't think that the devil has any better advocate than me, so I'm just going to advocate for him one more time before this conversation takes another turn. How are you, Bill Whittle, different than the people who said that because they didn't nail that cop in St. Louis, or Ferguson, Missouri, rather, over the shooting of Michael Brown, that there was an abortion of justice there, there was a corruption involved there because the indictment didn't come down because everybody knew that cop did something wrong killing that kid. Now you say, I know, everybody knows that Hillary Clinton's guilty as hell, but the FBI director and the Attorney General of the United States says we don't have what we need to take this to trial.
I'd be happy to answer that question for you. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh yeah, if the St. Louis police had put the same manpower and investigative power behind that case that the FBI put into the Clinton case, they would have exonerated that cop in hours instead of in weeks. So it's not what everybody knew. It's the effort that went into finding out what really happened. And the FBI has done that. We know what the evidence is, even without seeing any classified material, and I hope I never do. And we know that there is enough that Hillary has to come up on charges. She doesn't have to be imprisoned or even convicted, but she has to be brought up on charges if we're going to keep this system honest. And we now know that our system is thoroughly corrupted at the highest levels.
Now, to answer your question, Scott, it's a question of what does the law say? I'm one of those old-fashioned guys that believe in the rule of law. If the law said that if a police officer shoots somebody in the line of duty, it's first-degree murder, period. Doesn't matter if he's being knifed, then yes, then the cop should have gone down, if that's what the law said. But that's not what the law says. The law says that shooting somebody is murder, but there are mitigating circumstances, including self-defense, and police personnel operating under the color of uniform, the color of the law, have exemptions, and they get the benefit of the doubt simply because they're confronted with this kind of violence on a daily basis. So it's not a question of whether or not that cop shot Michael Brown. Of course he shot Michael Brown. That's not what the law says. The law says, did he commit murder? Did he overstep his bounds as a police officer? And when he's being beaten up by this 300-pound guy, most people said no. Now, if Hillary Clinton's case was, if the law was the same in this case, where he said, you're not allowed to take things back and put them on a private server unless there's a compelling reason for you to do so, then it would just be the same thing. We'd have nothing, and we know we'd have nothing.
Okay, so here we are. We're a couple of weeks out from the Democratic National Convention. The presumptive Democratic nominee for President of the United States, a former First Lady, former Secretary of State, former Senator, has now been declared by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to have been extremely careless with classified top secret information. What impact does this have, first of all, on the DNC and the whole nominating process, and then after that on the general election?
Can I take this one first? Because I actually saw something right before we started recording. Our friend and our old boss, Roger L. Simon, he wrote a piece for PJ Media today asking, did Comey actually destroy Hillary Clinton by exonerating her, with exonerating in scare quotes, for exactly the reasons you're talking about, Scott. The woman seeking the highest office in the land, the nicest thing the FBI could say about her is that she was extremely careless in the handling of top secret and special action program, which is above top secret, information. Extremely careless. She's sloppy. She is, her own aide, Huma Abedin, says, often confused. This woman is not just morally unfit, she may be mentally unfit at her age to serve as president. That said, I'm afraid that you and Roger might both be wrong for the simple reason that we are so, as a nation, so Clinton fatigued still by scandal after scandal, that who's going to be swayed by just one more? The vast middle of this country is mostly going to sit out this election, I'm afraid, because the vast middle of the country hates Trump and they hate Clinton. So it's going to be who has the best lock on their supporters, and I'm afraid that's Hillary.
Why is it the Clinton fatigue means that we're tired of their scandals rather than we're just tired of them.
If I only
Because-
knew, Scott. If I only knew.
Scott, I'd love to buy into this theory that Comey, by making this, has basically ruined her campaign. No, the way you ruin her campaign is to indict her for felony charges,
Bingo.
which she committed. This is not like he's doing us a favor. Clinton supporters don't care. I talked to somebody a couple days ago about this email thing, and she was a supporter of Clinton. I said, there's a good chance she'll be in jail in the next couple weeks or months. She goes, no, she's been cleared of everything. This was 4 or 5 days ago, a week ago. They think she's been cleared of everything. Now she has been cleared of everything. They don't care. And there's just so much evidence. Forget this too. It's like the Benghazi evidence and all of this stuff. And these guys keep dropping this ball. It's the simplest thing in the world to prosecute. There's something going on. And I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm telling you right now, the main operating factor here is the press, and that's it, period. If the press was doing its job, this meeting on the tarmac out there would have been the lead of every newspaper for the last 2 days, and they'd be asking all kinds of questions about what's going on. But the press controls what we think because they control our information. It's the press, 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 it's the press.
So Bernie Sanders has a couple 2,000 delegates still, and he, theoretically has not caved. I think he still has Secret Service protection. At what point does the Democratic National Committee go, even though she's not going to be indicted, holy cow,
Never.
what a burden.
What she walked away from an airtight case. There's nothing that anybody can do to her. There's no taint on her. She's not. See, this is the thing. I had a conversation with David Horowitz about this earlier today. These people are not like us, and their supporters are not like us either. They don't care. They want the first woman president, and they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. And this is what we have to realize is we got to get in there and start fighting close up with knives, because I'm all about by playing fair and Marquis of Queensberry's rules, with an honorable opponent. But these people are criminals and they're traitors. And
those are figurative knives that Bill Whittle was talking about.
No, I'm not past figurative knives now. I don't work for that organization anymore. I can say whatever I want to, thanks to the members here.
That's right.
I'm really genuinely, I'm running out of words here. Why don't we take this off of the question of whether or not she did it and whether or not the FBI's, why they didn't bring charges, and let's talk about the future. And I want to talk about the future in short term, which would mean the election up until first week in November, and then I want to talk about it long term, assuming that she wins.
Stephen?
That's to me. First, I want to mention something. Usually when I put out a semi-offensive tweet like the one featuring John Wilkes Booth, it'll get picked up by maybe the little Washington Post troll, Greg Sargent, or some of those guys. Often a bunch of those guys. Ooh, look what the conservative thinks is funny. This one only got picked up so far that I've seen by 2 journalists, famous enough for a blue check, but not so famous that I'd heard of either one of them, with the usual kind of, tut, you can't say that. That was an assassin. Well, guess what? John Wilkes Booth did an awful thing. He killed one man. James Comey killed rule of law for an entire country. So no, those two things aren't the same at all. That's what we have to look forward to going forward. Hillary walked away from this scot clean, and let me tell you why this is probably going to help her. Because all of her money people, all of her supporters who've got the littlest bit of dirty business in their past, or who want to commit some even dirtier business in the future, knows that President Hillary Clinton is just the person to get them right out of their own hot water.
Well,
Scotty,
and
let's keep it on the campaign, and then we'll talk about the long distance rule of law thing.
And I think that there are going to be a lot of people in the Democratic National Convention, frankly. There are some decent people there, and there are Bernie Sanders supporters and there are some decent Bernie Sanders supporters as well, who will come together and say, look, the NBC Wall Street Journal poll at the end of June already said that 69% of the registered voters in this country think that Hillary Clinton is dishonest, and they're concerned about it. Now, unfortunately, 63% said they thought that Donald Trump was dishonest as well. But oddly enough, 56% of registered voters said they think that Donald Trump says what he means. So at least when he's lying, he believes it. But they think that they think that Hillary Clinton is just a pathological liar and does not believe it. I guess that's not pathological. But so we have going into the convention. I mean, how do you rally around this woman? Is there going to be a huge celebration and rallies on the floor saying, "See, another right-wing conspiracy"?
Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen.
By the rule of
that's
law.
exactly
Yes.
what's going to happen. Yes,
And
that's
also
exactly
they know
what's
she'll
going to
keep
happen.
handing out the goodies.
That's right. And then try to bring charges against her when she's president. Try to bring any kind of an indictment against her when she's president, and she'll simply say, "This is just will the Republicans never give up?" I mean, I've been I was accused of horrible treason and things, and obviously there was no basis to that. No, of course they're going to celebrate it. Listen, my first thought when I heard this news, well, the second or third thought was, who I think Donald Trump ought to pick as his running mate? I think you ought to
James
pick Bernie
Comey.
Sanders. I really do. No, I really do. I'm not joking. I'm serious
not?
now. I'm serious. Because even though Bernie Sanders is a communist, and even though Donald Trump has an awful lot about him that I don't like, if you were to run a Trump and Sanders ticket, you would basically be saying the American people have had enough of this lawless nonsense, right? And Trump and Bernie can argue it out, and they can argue it out in the Congress, and they can argue it out in the news, which is what's supposed to happen. And you would pick up so many. I really believe this, because our first reaction to Bernie as a vice president would be what? And their first reaction to Bernie being a vice president on Trump's ticket would be what? What? No, this is the person we hate the most. If somebody bothered to take the time to explain to these people the reason that we have done so well is because we are outsiders and we do not trust the system. The system is rigged. It was rigged against Bernie Sanders, and it's rigged against Donald Trump.
Bill, a couple of things. Number one, Bernie Sanders would have to agree to be on Trump's ticket, and he never would. He will line up right behind Hillary.
I know
as soon as the convention starts. It's a great thought, and I love it to death, and I love you to death for coming up with this stuff. But it's not going to happen.
I know it.
And the other thing is, no, I've forgotten the other thing, so I'll let Scott
let me
take
just
back
throw this
over.
in. Let's say Hillary survives the convention, which of course she will.
Yes.
And she goes forward, and now she is actually strengthened by the fact that she's triumphed over another Republican witch hunt. And so her supporters are fired up going to this. Donald Trump has already gone full crooked Hillary, and he has been doing that for the last month and a half. So where does Trump go from here? Is he essentially now forced into the position of making the case that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Justice, and untold numbers of career investigators and prosecutors and people like that are all in the tank for Hillary Clinton, that the system, in fact, the foundation of our constitutional republic is in utter tatters, and only he can save it?
That's exactly what he needs to do. And that's the only way he's going to get elected. I'll say this about Donald Trump. I've said a lot of negative things about Donald Trump, but I'll say this about him. That guy brings the fight. He brings the fight, and he doesn't back down on this aspect of it. He will bring the fight. When she was doing the Republican war on women thing, he said, I don't think you, since your husband's a rapist and since you've been basically defending all the women he destroyed, I don't think you really get to go there, Hillary. Who in the Republican Party has that kind of nerve? Nobody. Nobody has that kind of nerve. Nobody. So I think what we have to do is so this is something I want to get into now. Let me preface this by just making this very, very, very clear. Stephen Scott and I have been friends doing this show for 9 years
7
back
years.
at PJTV? Yeah, 7 years,
yeah.
and now we're doing it here. And we've been admirers of each other's work before then for another 4 or 5. We do Right Angle here at BillWhittle.com, and one of the things I like most about Right Angle is I like the fact that we can disagree about things and not have to beat people up and not have to say those, you're an evil guy. So Scott, my question for you is this: you've caught a lot of flack, over your never Trump position. I was very, very close to being a never Trumper, and then I changed my mind, and back and forth and back and forth. But does this change your mind? Because we can talk all we want to about our conscience and our vote, but it's going to be one of these two people. There's no question it's going to be one of these two people. And as far as I know, Donald Trump didn't leave 4 people to die out on a building in Benghazi, and Donald Trump didn't take top secret information and store it in the Trump Tower, and Donald Trump didn't have any of these felonies. And for those people who are worried about Trump, Trump and he's just a loose cannon. What will happen is if Trump is elected, then the press will suddenly come to work.
Well, they have. I mean, as soon as it was clear that he had the nomination, all of a sudden, we found out that the Washington Post was working on a book, and they, have these exposés that they're releasing every week or so. I don't think that this situation with Hillary Clinton affects anything for me because I knew, that the old joke, I knew she was a snake when we picked her up, So it's not like all of a sudden I go, holy cow, you see what happened with Hillary Clinton. And I am not fully convinced that, James Comey is in the tank for Hillary Clinton, although probably Loretta Lynch is. But Loretta Lynch, took herself out of the game in a sense by doing that stupid thing with Bill Clinton. This doesn't change my view that we have two reprehensible characters running for president. They're reprehensible in different ways. Different ways. But it doesn't mean that I have to, as a free man, I'm compelled to vote for one of them.
No, that's true, Scotty. And I want to get into this because this is, and we're friends and we're going to stay friends. And I love the fact that we disagree on this. To me, it's the essence of what this show is. And I like to think it's the essence of what this website is and what our entire movement is. We don't have a party line. We're allowed to disagree. But let me ask you this question then. It's going to be one of these two people. And I understand the argument. I really do. And I have a lot of people who I respect enormously who are never Trump people. P.J. O'Rourke was the guy who brought me into conservatism. I thought he was great. He's a never Trump person. Ben Shapiro and a bunch of other people I admire deeply. Andrew Klavan, who, well, obviously don't admire Klavan, but you get the general idea.
Klavan hasn't said he's never Trump yet.
Oh, yes, he has. Oh, sure.
Really?
He has. Oh, yeah. Many,
I've been listening to his podcast,
times.
and he basically he says he's despicable and that he's terrible and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think Klavan is completely ruled out voting
yes,
for him.
I think he has. Yes, I'm quite sure he did.
I think so.
So, I want you to make the case to conservatives. Make the never Trump case, and then I'll make the never Trump case.
Well, and I don't want to really affiliate myself with anything that the so-called never hashtag movement, is
right. No, I didn't mean to throw you into that bin.
But let me just say, from where I am, there are times in the span of human history where your vote doesn't necessarily choose a candidate, but it expresses an opinion. And so there are times when you say, you know what? We're never going to, for example, let's say I were a libertarian. We're never going to have a libertarian president if we don't start showing that some people will go to the polls and vote for libertarians.
Right, I understand.
If I were to vote for Donald Trump, I would be essentially, in my mind, telling the Republican Party, I'm okay with that. Send another one of those along. And I think, and this is, I know I diverge from a lot of people in this, I believe that Donald Trump is the ultimate establishment insider Republican candidate because he really doesn't believe what the Republican Party nominally believes in. He's just all about winning. And to me, the thing that I found distasteful and despicable about the Republican Party from the local level all the way up is how many people there are in there who basically say, I don't care what happens to this country as long as my team wins. Now, they don't say that out loud, but they basically say, yeah, I know our guys are despicable in this case, but we're going to vote for him because those other guys are even more despicable. And I think at some point somebody has to stand for integrity and say, I'm not voting for a guy who's trying to ruin our country through protective trade measures. I'm not voting for a guy who wouldn't know the Constitution if it bit him in the butt. I'm not voting for a guy who has established a reputation for going in, getting his and getting out and leaving other people screwed. I don't have to do that. I can vote for someone else. So I haven't decided how I'm going to vote yet when I get to that point. But when it comes down to the election in November, maybe my vote says, you know what, the mainstream parties, at least in my case, the Republican Party has abandoned me, and I want to cast a vote that demonstrates that there are some people anyway, a remnant remains, that will go some other way.
Yeah, Scott, if I can jump in here, I've gone back and forth on whether or not I'm going to vote for Trump, and I'm probably going to go back and forth another 12 times before Election Day. That said, the establishment GOP has proven itself so ineffective at protecting and preserving conservative and liberty-loving values that someone like Donald Trump became possible, who doesn't really represent many or any of those conservative liberty-loving values. And so if Trump is to lose, dear God, I hope he loses in a 400 electoral vote blowout. I hope she smears the ground with him so that that brand is just as discredited as the Boehner McConnell brand of republicanism is.
All right, now I'll make the counter case.
All right. Remember, I said if he loses.
To me, the argument is the same argument as the Brexit argument, and that is this: the system is fundamentally corrupt. We know this is true. We know it's true. Barack Obama was raised by feral communists. They never reported it. When Barack Obama decides to move a date back on a piece of legislation, just announces it, that is not within his constitutional powers. And it's not within his constitutional powers to issue these executive orders and so on. This is the new norm now. Now that's the norm. The norm is that the law is broken and the Constitution is disregarded at the highest levels, and that's the norm. Now, I don't disagree with you about one thing. I don't disagree with you about one thing you said about Donald Trump. I don't disagree. I completely agree with everything you said, pretty much verbatim. However, if the system is not reformed and not absolutely cleaned out, then there will not be ever another election in the way that we understand the term.
And he is not that guy. That's my case, Bill.
But Steve,
Donald Trump doesn't care about the system.
I completely agree, but that's not the point. The point is this. You have to look at when we talk about the system, what is the system? Okay, what is it? The system is the Democratic Party in Washington. It's the news medias in New York, and it's the entertainment and pop culture in Los Angeles. And these three things go round and round and round, and they tell us what to believe. And I think virtually every single member of the Republican Party has fallen into this hypnotic trance, because David Horowitz called them gold star Republicans. He said basically they all want to be gold star Republicans. They want the Democrats to say, oh, he's a nice Republican. He's not one of the racists like the other ones. That's never going to happen, ever. That's never, ever going to happen. So if this system continues, and if this felon is allowed to become president of the United States, then we don't get to discuss things about the next election. I don't know that there's going to be a next election. I'm not saying that there won't be a sham election, but if you let 30 million voters into the country to vote Democrat, and if you decide to completely eliminate voter ID laws, and if you do all these other things, and if the media, Scotty, if the media continues to tell us who to vote for and why, and not only doesn't cover Hillary's stories, but basically by not covering them says there's nothing to them. It's the end of the republic.
This is a sham election, and the media loves him and he loves them more than any candidate I've ever seen.
The media loves them because the media can't stand Trump. The media hates Trump. But they love the exposure, they love the coverage. He's good for business, but they hate him. They all hate him.
That's right. So eyeballs.
So look,
I just want to get you guys, to sit down at a bar, some lemonade for Scott, a beer for Bill, and we're just going to hug this out. Can we do that?
But see, this is the most important thing. This is the most important thing. I don't bear Scott any animosity, and I don't think Scott is wrong.
No.
I don't think he's wrong. I think he's voting. I think his conscience is telling him one thing, and my conscience is telling me something else. I understand that by voting for Donald Trump.
This is America.
Yeah, I understand that by voting for him, I'm responsible for whatever mayhem that may come along. I know he's not a conservative. I know
Bill, Bill, you're in California. It's going to go blue. It's going to go deep blue. It's probably going to be 60-40 or better. Vote your conscience instead of trying to play games with it. That's probably what it's going to come down to for me. If it looks like a blowout either way,
I will vote my conscience.
Vote for Gary Johnson, because why not?
I'm going to vote my conscience, and my conscience is going to be to vote for Donald Trump. And the reason I'm going to vote my conscience is because somebody has to stop these criminals. Somebody does. This is the worst tool in the shed, and I don't disagree with it, but somebody has to stop them. And I don't care what kind of a president Donald Trump is. I don't care. I know what kind of a president Hillary Clinton is going to be, and I know that they are going to take the final steps to make sure that another election, in the way we understand elections, will not happen.
Well, somebody does have to stop this process, and we sent one of those somebodies back to Texas. We sent another one back to Wisconsin. We sent a bunch of them home. We sent one back to Louisiana. During this process. So in any case, we have to wrap this thing up. But I think that certainly, I hope that this process, even though we're not handing down indictments or hearing news of indictments today, I hope this process at least leads to some reflection on the part of some persuadable Democrats who say, you know what, maybe she's not the one. Before the convention, I actually still hope that at very least they hold her accountable. See, that's my problem with the whole thing is, let's say she was not chargeable or indictable, but it's clear that she did some things wrong, and they said she was extremely careless with extremely important information, and we don't need another sloppy Sandy Berger who just walks away and they go, oh, she's just an affable dunce. We're about to give this affable dunce the codes to the nuclear launch. So I think that at some level she has to be accountable, if not in prison or in court, at least to the voters.
Let me say one last thing. I know we need to wrap this up, so I'll make this very, very quick. Conventioneers, Cruz versus Sanders. Give us this.
All right, I'll wrap up my for the day. Donald Trump is the nominee of the Republican Party because he got more votes than other people did. Okay? It's not like he bought the nomination. He got more votes than other people did. He's tapping into something, and it's the same thing that caused the British people to leave the European Union. It's an utter disgust and it's an utter distrust of the system as it exists. Now, you and I, the three of us, all agree that Donald Trump is not the man that most people think he is, that he's not a conservative, that he doesn't have any principles at all other than Donald Trump. I don't disagree with that. But let me tell you one thing, and I think this is critically important. I've talked to a bunch of conservatives who are going to vote for Trump, and they all tell me the same thing. They say, I know he's not a conservative. I know that he's a little loose with the truth. I know he's embarrassing. I know he makes awkward comments. I know that all of this stuff, I know all of these things. I'm voting for him anyway because it's the last chance we have to smash open this system, smash open this iron triangle of the Democratic Party in Washington politics, news media in New York, and pop culture in Hollywood. I would vote for the sweet meteor of death over Hillary Clinton. I cannot tolerate the thought.
I'm looking at him.
I cannot tolerate the thought that this person is going to be president. I didn't think anything would surpass my disgust and revulsion for Barack Obama, but it actually has happened now. So we'll continue to have this discussion. And I just want to close the total thing up by saying this. Scott Ott's position and the position of other people who are holding his opinion is a moral decision. It's not a vain decision. It's not a calculated decision. It's not politically calculated. It's a painful decision, I would imagine, but it is a moral stand. It is a moral stand to say, I'm not going to be a part of something I think is going to be evil. I'm not going to be a part of it. My position is we are getting evil one way or another. And my position is the same as the U.S. Marines on Guadalcanal. We'll go fight fairly. We'll send medics out to the Japanese. When we send 15 guys over to pick up 90 Japanese stranded on an island and give them some food and bring them back and get them into shelter, and they gun them down and they cut off their arms with their samurai swords because they've got Marine Corps stickers, tattoos on their arms, I'm not playing by those rules anymore. I'm not. I understand what she is, and I understand what they're doing, and I understand how well it's working, and I will do anything. I will throw a wrench, a rock, an elephant. I will throw anything into the gears of this thing, anything, because I don't foresee a possible set of consequences that is worse than allowing this thing to become more entrenched than we are today.
And Bill, can I suggest
Please.
that this is why something like what we're doing here, what we're doing at BillWhittle.com, what we're doing at Right Angle, what we're doing with Firewall and the Nexus Report and Time Over Target and News Actually, all of this stuff, this voice of liberty, this voice of sanity, this voice of constitutional responsibility, it's why it's so important. It's why people subscribe at BillWhittle.com, not for their own selves, really. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many members go, hey, let's get the members-only content out to everybody in the world because they're trying to advance the message. The people who sign up and pay $10 a month are not saying, me, gimme something, I just want to hear my echo chamber. They're saying there is an important series of truths that are not being heard in the mainstream media that need to get out there. And so, far be it for the one who feeds his own mouth with the spoon that you hold in your hand to say, please consider seriously becoming a member at BillWhittle.com. It's $9.95 a month. And yeah, you're going to get something out of it, but it's not for you. It's for the country, and frankly, in a larger sense, it's for the world.
Hey, Ed, let me just echo that real quick. You know, we're not sitting in these chairs in what's supposed to be our free time for an hour talking about all this to bring you what we see as the truth, because you're paying $10 an hour or
That's
$10
right.
a month, but your $10 a month makes it possible. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go one step further with this. I mentioned on a couple of right angles before the show, I've said it on Stratosphere Lounge a few times, right up until the point when you guys came along, when PJTV closed, I felt a certain amount of insecurity about asking people for membership money because I didn't think I was giving them enough members-only content. I didn't think it was... I am an extremely principled person when it comes to this. And I'm also raised the way that both of you guys are. I'm also raised in a way to say that asking for help it's just not done. Just asking for money is just awkward and it's simply not done by people of honor and integrity. But I'll tell you something, folks. I walked into the office today, and this is just fair warning, so consider yourselves forewarned. I walked into the office today and I said, I am going to wring every dollar out of every person, and if you don't want to hear it again, get off the mailing list. If the FBI will not protect the United States of America, if the Republican Senate and the Republican House won't protect the United States of America, if the GOP leadership won't protect the United States of America, somebody's got to protect the United States of America, and I'm going to do it here with you guys. And the more resources we have, the more we can do. And if Hillary Clinton wins this election, then it's time to up the membership, not down it. This country's not going down on my watch. It's not going to happen on my watch as long as I'm breathing. I am not going to let that happen. So if you're watching this and you feel, my God, what can we do? You can go to BillWhittle.com and get a membership, because it is only this message and the message of very few people out there, guys like Steve Crowder and so on, who are keeping this sense that you are not absolutely nuts. This is the one email I get more than anything from people is like, if it weren't for you, Bill and Scott and Steve, I just throw in the towel. I'd be convinced I was absolutely nuts. I'd be convinced I was absolutely nuts. I can't do this by myself. And you guys can't do it by yourself. It costs money. We're capitalists, for God's sakes. We need the financial tools to get these messages out there and to advertise them and market them. And I've been saying for a year, that if Hillary Clinton does not face charges, it's the end of the United States, because the rule of law is finished. So I'm in a whole different place now. Now I feel that if I'm not asking people for money every second of the day, I'm a traitor to the United States of America. That's how I actually feel, because I think we have the ability to do something about it. I think we have the ability to actually make a difference. And even if we don't make a difference, somebody's got to be standing on that hill with a flag. Even if Custer goes down, you've got to be on that hill, and somebody's got to hold the flag. And that's what we're going to do here. That is what we're going to do here.
This video will be saved on Facebook in a little bit. Facebook takes a few minutes to archive that. We're going to see if we can also create a version of it that we can upload to BillWhittle.com from our own little recordings here. But in any case, you've got the Facebook video. You can share it with others. Please help us to advance this message of liberty. And we know it's not something that I have to persuade you of. It's something you want to do, and I know that. So thanks so much for doing it.
Can I, Scott, can I mention, without mentioning the location, that change in your status?
You can, without mentioning the location.
Okay, folks, just so you know, when we left PJTV, which was funded by a billionaire, Scott and Steve and I were all doing this full time, and we got a lot of members from PJTV, but we didn't get enough members for me to be able to pay Scott to do News Actually every day, and so Scott now works in retail. So if you think that this money is coming to us so that we can just jet around, it doesn't work that way. Scotty is working retail in order to feed his family. And this is a waste of resources that need to be put into this fight. So there we go. And I'm proud of you, Scott. I'm proud of you for doing it. I'm proud of you for taking care of your family. I'm proud of you for not asking for any help from me or from anyone else, not taking any assistance. I couldn't be prouder of you, or you either, Steve. You guys are the two best friends I've got out there. It's so odd to think that we've only met face to face 2 or 3 times. I mean, it seems like I see you every day.
Well, there's a lot of good people out there who are working retail jobs and who are working, with their hands and who are working with their minds in offices, making it possible for us to do this. And I deeply appreciate that.
BillWhittle.com, and right at the top of the page it says either make a donation or become a member. This is not for me, this is for America. This is what we do, and this is how we fight. And this is a war which is not about bayonets or battleships. It's a war about ideas and stories, and we need to get in this fight now. This is not a joke anymore. If we don't
Thanks,
turn
folks.
this around, yes. Thanks, folks. We'll see you.